From lovely Lviv in Ukraine. Welcome to the live stream. You might be able to hear some romantic music being played on the streets of the historic old town of Lviv. Got back here quite recently and we'll be producing more content from cities like Lviv, also going to be in Odessa. That is the plan pretty soon. So this week's live stream, today is Sunday, it's the 1st of June, is an important day in Poland. It's the second round of the Polish presidential election. It is a really tight race. The opinion polls had basically a 1-point difference for the candidate, or obviously we're analyzing things from the point of view of Ukraine and the Russo-Ukrainian war on this channel. The runoff is between two candidates that are basically, again, anti-Moscow, we'll say. However, we have a more hard-right candidate and a center-right candidate, basically, and the center-right candidate is more pro-Ukrainian than the hard-right candidate. However, there isn't a massive difference in terms of their attitude towards Ukraine, a little bit, but it is not massive. It's not like with the Romanian elections that we had, what was it, a week or 2 weeks ago at this point, where we had Simeon and Dan in a runoff, and they were very, very different in terms of their proposed policies with respect to Ukraine, where Simeon was seen as being maybe not pro-Moscow, because there is a little bit of rivalry between his political party in terms of, what's the word, not revanchism, well, we could say revanchism, but irredentism is the better word, taking back territory they think should be in Romania, parts of Ukraine, all of Moldova. That obviously clashes with the Russian government's, with the Moscow government's strategy in the region as well, and desires to take control of Moldova and all of Ukraine. So they have that bit of a clash. However, they were very anti-Ukrainian in terms of their policies, and it's not quite as an extreme a difference with respect to the Polish elections. However, probably overall in terms of European solidarity, the PIS candidate is the more hard-right candidate. He who is more aligned with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, and as a result, it would probably weaken European EU centralization and the ability to act collectively. So that's probably the biggest difference between the two candidates. I looked at Polymarket, and they are backing the Civic platform. So the current Prime Minister Donald Tusk's ally, who is the center-right candidate. So not great pronouncing the Polish names, so I'll probably butcher, but why not? Just pulled up the name. Let's see, because we got Norowski versus, but I can never, let's see, president election. Poland. It was a Polish language has obviously a lot of vowels if you've ever looked at it. So Trzaskowski, I probably said that completely wrong. He's the mayor of Warsaw. So if he wins, and looking at Polymarket, it was like now a 75% chance they were giving. But in the opinion polls, it was basically within the margin of error. So interesting that Polymarket, it's swung in the last 2 days very clearly towards Trzaskowski, but of course that doesn't mean necessarily he's going to win. This will be better for Ukraine since he is more positive towards helping Ukraine than the other guy's name is Nawrocki. Just make sure I got that right. Nawrocki, yeah, that is correct. Nawrocki. Again, apologies to anyone who's Polish if I'm butchering all the names. And we will wait and see. I guess tonight we should know the election results by the morning. So that is the first big thing happening today. Other big thing, Ukraine has launched a spectacular attack on Russian air assets in military airfields in Russia, thousands of kilometers from the border with Ukraine. So the one was in Irkutsk, which is where Lake Baikal is. It's basically in Central Asia, right? It's in Siberia. And there was a couple of airfields hit around the same time, targeting many of Russia's strategic bombers while they were sitting on the tarmac, in the aprons, on the airfields. So pretty spectacular. I saw videos of 3 or 4 of these bombers on fire, and it's obviously shot from a drone going over it. So pretty spectacular to see that. There are reports that it was almost 50 Russian aircraft were targeted. We'll have to see how many were destroyed if we can afterwards. Normally there's a lot of satellite images that come up that are going to be in the public sphere that allow us to judge the damage, if they'll be completely destroyed or just badly damaged and repairable. We'll just have to see, but it is something that definitely will weaken Russia's capability to launch rockets at Ukraine from far away. They use these strategic bombers to fire rockets, missiles at Ukraine quite regularly. The other way they obviously attack Ukraine from far is using drones that obviously are controlled to arrive. But there you see Ukraine was able to use drones thousands and thousands of kilometers. I don't know how far is this, like 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers, probably from the from the Ukrainian border. It's pretty crazy. Let's see. Well, if I put it into Google here, distance from, let's say, Kyiv to Irkutsk. Let's see if it will tell me quickly. It says it's like 6,200 kilometers driving on the road. So we'll say it definitely looks like it's 5,000 kilometers maybe from the Ukrainian border. That is just absolutely insane that Ukraine is able to strike Russia so deep. So if you look at the context of the war, Russia's never been able to establish air dominance in the war, which was a big surprise to military analysts. They expected Russia to just dominate the skies, a little bit in the vein that the US is able to do that when it's been involved in wars. And similarly to Russia's naval assets, attacks like this, if they're able to wipe out large parts of the Russian Air Force, especially their strategic bomber force, then they may end up being neutralized. A little bit like the Black Sea Fleet. The famous Black Sea Fleet is irrelevant pretty much in this war at this point, because they basically can't operate without the threat of being sunk. I think Ukraine has sunk about a quarter or a third of the entire fleet in terms of tonnage at this point. So if Ukraine is able to inflict huge casualties or damage to the Russian Air Force, it could render them less important as well. And clearly there isn't really many places in Russia that are going to be safe from Ukrainian attack. Like, Russia is the biggest country in the world geographically, easily, and it stretches all the way to Vladivostok, obviously on the other side of the world. But if they can get all the way to Irkutsk, I'm just looking at the map, it's it's actually north of Mongolia. It's not even close to Kazakhstan. Then there really aren't too many places that Russia is going to be able to hide its air assets or other strategic military targets going forward. Everything can be targeted and hit. So that's pretty spectacular to see, and a huge success, both in substantive and in terms of psychological terms. Clearly, if they're able to strike from so far strike from Ukraine into so deep into Russian territory. On the other, I guess, third thing to bring up in this live stream, Donald Trump, the US president, just keeps giving Vladimir Putin a pass. He wouldn't say if he was a good guy or a bad guy, and kept trying to avoid taking sides in a press conference I saw this morning when I woke up, and he's giving him more weeks to maybe make some overtures toward peace. That looks completely quixotic at this point. He's obviously not interested. That's clear to everybody. And you have to wonder what Donald Trump's plan really is. We'll have to see. Apparently, Putin has got 2 more weeks to mess about and drag out this negotiation process, and we'll see what comes of it. But I have very low expectations that we're going to see really anything substantial come from it. And saying for almost a year that towards the end of 2025, Russia may start to run out. I mean, that's the expectation that they'll run out of manpower, material, and money. They need to solve all 3 of those problems. And if they're unable, then maybe they will want to pause on the fighting. Until then, there's no indication. And Donald Trump's claim that he would solve the war in 1 day looks as ridiculous in reality as it sounded at the time. These conflicts are extremely complicated, to resolve, get a peace agreement that would last. It may take years, and in the meantime, Ukraine will fight on, and Russia will continue to launch its aggression against this country. So those are the three items I'm going to bring up. I see that I left this live stream actually, and I got a little bit of an allergy. I should have taken my antihistamine today, clearly, and I didn't, I realize. And I also left this live stream offline, which kind of defeats the purpose of it. So I guess you can watch it on replay. I did that actually on one of my main channel videos as well recently, and it still got a lot of views afterwards. So I guess many of you will come and watch this on replay, even though you missed it live, and kind of defeats the purpose of me having a live stream. I need to make sure that it is not just unlisted. Let me just see if it, yeah, I see that it is. I need to take an antihistamine. Let me just turn it on here. Now it's actually going live, and maybe some of you will join, and I don't even have a tissue. Anyways, completely unprepared. As you see in the raw, and I got a little bit of a sniffle here. I have some hay fever, as this is the season in Ukraine. So let me know your comments down below about those three issues, the ongoing peace negotiations, which are not really peace negotiations at all. It's just a little bit of political theater. Ukraine's hugely important attack on Russian air assets today, thousands of kilometers away from the Russo-Ukrainian border, and the Polish elections that I don't think are quite as crucial as the Romanian elections were, but still important in terms of the trajectory of this war. It will still have some sort of effect. And if you are thinking of coming here to Ukraine, down below in the description is my guide for coming here. So a lot of logistical information, how to stay safe as possible. Obviously, we're in a country with the biggest war in Europe since World War II, and also my hospitality guide. So save you lots of time figuring out the best restaurants, cafes, bars, all that kind of stuff is. And I was enjoying them here in Lviv over the last couple of days, over the weekend, in particular yesterday. And I am about to go and do likewise. I'm going to hit the gym and then enjoying some of that great Lviv cuisine. I was actually at a Crimean Tartar restaurant last night, which is one of my favorites here. So anyways, there's a link to that guide down below. So let me know your comments and your questions, and I will be back later in a few. Well, actually, I'll probably be back tomorrow morning once we have the results of the Polish election with a full video. So also let me know what kind of content you want to see here on the geopolitical channel, for something in particular you want me to cover now that I'm going to be back in Ukraine and heading to Odessa Mama. So that's it. I'll say Slava Ukraini and get a tissue and take an antihistamine. Героям слава і до перемоги.